Hey everyone, welcome back to Surviving with Boomer. I'm here enjoying a nice cup of coffee here on a Tuesday evening. And I thought we were at a point where we can show off a couple of things. Now, first of all, I have to say thank you so much to those who've reached out, mainly on the Discord, my personal, the Slime Fun Discord, the server I play on. A few people reached out and said how impressed they were with the builds, and that really humbles me. I really, truly do appreciate that. I know I'm not the best builder in the world, and I know, things could be better, but I am continually trying to improve, and I appreciate feedback, comments, suggestions, and I actually am going to ask you guys for your suggestion on this. To me, I don't like this. I thought it might eventually get there, but I don't. And my thought was initially just to pop out the deep slate tiles, go get some nether wart blocks, set them back one so there's a little bit of depth that wouldn't make them as bright, but it would still contrast nicely. Let me know what you think of the idea. If you've got another suggestion, I'd love to hear it. I've tried strip birch in there where they were flat. I didn't like it. I tried to strip birch when it was recessed. I didn't like it. I tried the kelp blocks as strip birch. Didn't like it because it mirrored the stairwell too much. So I'd love to hear any ideas you've got. Now, if I remember right, in the last episode, either we were about to or had started to dig out this fourth or third main area around the center of this. It's not quite done yet. I still have to put lights in the ceiling, and I still have to put in a watermelon farm. But it's going to be duplicated just like this. This is an older concept. I think it was El Mango who came up with it. Essentially, the observer detects when the melon stem latches on to a grown pumpkin, fires up into the block. When that happens, a signal activates a note block, which fires the piston to push it and to break it, and so on and so forth. Underneath here is a hopper minecart that goes back and forth 9 times, picks them all up, goes up to the second level, does the same thing, drops them all off back there in the corner, comes back, gets that layer, comes back, gets that layer, heads back up, repeats that over and over and over. The watermelon farm back here will do the exact same thing. Now, the sugarcane farm, this design is as old as, I don't know, the observers are. This probably came out, 5 days after the observers were released in whatever version it was, 1.9 or 1.8, I don't remember, but nothing fancy or original here. Now, the kelp farm, I ran into somebody online a long time ago, K1 Incorporated. If you've never heard of him, I highly suggest checking out his channel. I think he does a really good job with his tutorials, very clear. The only difference between his build and my version of it is that for most of his, he's using, at least for like bamboo and sugarcane, he uses a bud switch to send a signal up all the way through each layer as well, whereas I use the observers to fire as needed. Minor difference, I don't care which way you go, but he does very nice tutorials, and so I will try to remember to put a link to his channel in the description. Now you got to be wondering, where does all this kelp go? Well, it actually works its way over here, and down there is a soul sand block. When the kelp comes, it'll shoot up this water tower. It'll go into a hopper, which goes into a dispenser that has 2 observers facing each other and firing non-stop into the dispenser to empty it out. Above this top hopper is a water stream that the dispenser fires into, and the goal is to, from left to right, fill all these up with 320 kelp each. Now, the reason for this whole thing was to maximize the efficiency of kelp blocks as fuel. Each block of kelp, if you don't know, smelts 20 items. Well, a full hopper, 320, it means I use 16 kelp blocks. So it's a perfect mathematical formula, right? Now, you could have set this up where if 8 items come in, when the 8th one hits this hopper, it triggers, drops it down. The problem is 8 kelp don't always come one right after the other. And so this fuel burns out while this one doesn't get efficiently maximized, and it ends up getting wasted. So I've built, and this is what probably took so long, was 2.5 days of building and testing this. Here's how this works. Let's get back on top of this. So there's the hopper I described earlier. There's the dispenser. And below it, like I said, are 2 observers. One is facing into the dispenser, firing nonstop. So when kelp comes in here, it gets kicked out of here almost immediately. we'll come up and explain this, but this is what forces the pistons down to put the redstone blocks on the second row of hoppers. And because these hoppers are facing outwards, not down, that allows me to lock the second row of hoppers. So any kelp that's in here can't go in here. If those hoppers were pointed straight down, the lock would not work. So how does this work? Well, once we have our last hopper full of full of kelp, a couple things are going to happen. I've got a redstone block with a 1 signal degradation, bringing that signal down to 14. Our comparator is in compare mode. When this fills up, that'll register a redstone signal of 15. That will fire into that observer, which will do two things. First thing it'll do is it'll fire a 1-tick pulse onto the sticky piston. Reaches up, grabs that slime blocks, pulls this redstone block down, shuts off that sticky piston, which retracts that redstone block. When that redstone block retracts, all this power shuts off. This turns on, therefore stopping any more kelp from going into the dropper, which is critical to ensure more kelp doesn't go through and cause wasted fuel. The other signal that fires is into this sticky piston. It'll fire real quick and grab that redstone block and retract it. Now, right here, I do have two observers, same situation. They're observing each other and firing non-stop. This redstone block stops these items from being kicked out of the dropper into the chest above. So when I retract that, they'll start going to work. Now, if you follow your basic logic and how fast everything ticks, this will be firing as rapidly as possible, shooting his items up into the chest. This hopper will be pulling items back out of the chest into the dropper. Once the first one gets in the chest and back in the hopper, this will turn this comparator on, and it will stay on the entire process. That will turn off this redstone torch, and we'll explain more about that in a minute. It takes about 4 minutes to empty out this dropper to get everything up in the chest. When that happens, this comparator shuts off, observer detects the signal, and that fires that piston, which will shoot the observer over one block, allowing all of the items in the chest to come back down into the dropper. Once all the items are back into the dropper, this hopper will be empty. This will shut off, firing this redstone torch. Inside of here are 7 items. Can be any stackable item, doesn't matter what it is, as long as they're stackable to 30 to 64. And actually, I think 16 would even work. But anyways, we've got 7 in here. We have 1 in here as a starter that will always stay in there. Just the way the system works, it'll back out for a brief moment and then it'll go back in there, and it's actually necessary to stay in there, and I'll explain that in a bit. So every time that cycle of filling and emptying the chest happens, this fires over, and essentially what I'm doing is this cycle takes 7 minutes and 40 seconds. I need it to happen 6 times to give those furnaces enough time to burn off all that kelp, so as more comes in, by the time that last hopper is full, all the furnaces are empty and able to take more kelp. All right, so when the 8th one happens, this, or the 7th time through that cycle, this will empty, shutting off that signal, retracting the piston, retracting the redstone block. This hopper will drain out. When that hopper is drained out, this torch comes back on, sends a signal, pushes it up, which needs to stay up. This signal continues on and resets the system. In other words, it will refire this piston to shoot that redstone block back up, reactivating it, releasing the lock on the top or on the bottom row, putting it on the top, and allowing everything to fill back up. What took me so long was getting all these tiny little details and making sure the observers didn't fire twice. I'm not the greatest redstoner in the world, but I was able to make something that was relatively compact. The original thing I had filled that entire back area back there, and it was not as efficient. I tried running 2 etho hopper clocks on top of each other, and while it worked, it didn't reset my system properly. So I really had to spend some serious time playing around until I finally got it working. So from a difficulty level, for me at least, I know there are people out there that will look at this and go, man, it took you 3 days, or it's taken me 3 hours. And that's awesome. I'm learning. I'll get there at some point. But for me, it was a pretty cool thing to finish off. So these are all ready to go. We're getting close. We need to fill up about 6.5 more stacks, and then this system will fire. So that's that. The other thing I got done just a little while ago was my cocoa bean farm. And it's not quite done yet. I screwed up and everything's off by a block over here. Just from a symmetry standpoint, I may pull this roll out. I may push the wall back. We got cocoa beans back here as well. So how does this work? Real simple. Observer, boom. Comes right back down. And I simply walk around, pick up all the cocoa beans, and I'll probably have a chest. And then I can simply come back and replant these as needed and then put the rest in the chest. So I'll tell you what, just in case, I'm willing to bet you there's somebody who's going to say, hey, can you give me a tutorial? How does that work? Well, let me show you. Guys, so let's take a look at this redstone build. On a scale of 1 to 10, I'd probably call it a 2 or a 3. There's not a whole lot of fanciness to it. It's really simple basics. What we've done is we've set an observer facing up to watch the lever, piece of redstone dust to catch the signal. I've put a 4-tick repeater delay here simply just to give me enough time to look up. If I happen to be looking down or looking away, I want to be able to get over and watch everything fall off the wood as it goes up and down. And the nice thing is I don't have to flick the lever back. I just have to flick it once and I get the effect. Now this will work with anything that generates a redstone tick. So a repeater will do it. A comparator will do it. An observer will do it. Now I did it with an observer and the visual wasn't as clean as it was with the repeater. So I decided to stick with the repeater. Now if 1 tick is too fast for you and you want it a little bit slower, you can do it. Me personally, I don't like that, and so I'm going to go back to 1 tick. Now, you ask, why does it fire twice? Well, the observer catches the signal once going on and once coming off. So as it lights up, it observes it, sends a piston up, goes off, observes the turning off of the repeater, fires a second time. As long as all that happens before the signal gets up top, I'm okay. From here we keep it with redstone dust going up through a tower of observers, and this setup that's down here is identical up there, does the exact same thing and pushes all the jungle wood back down, and all I have to do is walk around and collect all of my cocoa beans. Now I could have very easily have, when this triggered, had water come out, pushed it all into a central location. I didn't feel the need to get that fancy. I'm not on a public server. I don't need billions of cocoa beans. I decided, you know what? I've got, what do I got here? 50 pieces of wood. That's 300 cocoa beans for every harvest. And that's assuming I don't even use the sides of our tower here. 300 would cover up to 2,400 of any item. So unless I'm doing some insane massive build, I can run this a few times, put the cocoa beans in a chest, and I'm good to go. So let's get back onto the rest of our day. So that's all there was to it, putting it together. Like I said, it's not that difficult. Let me get these cocoa beans replanted. Now, I did kind of tease on the last episode about the Guardian farm. That's coming up next. I'm probably going to even postpone the watermelon farm for now, because I really want to dig that Guardian farm. I'm really getting an itch to go tear that sucker apart. So I'm going to decide how we're going to record that. I'm kind of looking at a time lapse of a couple of different views, a couple of different options. I definitely want you guys to see just how much we are going to pull out. It's an insane amount of water, and we're going to do it 100% manually and survival. So thanks for watching, guys. I really appreciate it. Ideas, suggestions, comments, complaints, concerns. Hey, you know what? Let's have it. I appreciate all of your feedback. It just helps me be a better YouTuber, better Minecrafter. But don't forget, though, when you're playing Minecraft, you gotta go Boomer or you gotta go home. We'll see you later.